Okay, get this. A self-balancing personal transporter, right? It was touted as the future of movement, projected to be a billion-dollar company by like 2001.
Yeah, the hype was massive,
But then by the time it was acquired in 2015, they'd only sold about 140,000 units total.
which is, well, it's a tiny fraction of what they expected.
Exactly. So today we're diving deep into the story of the Segway. We want to figure out, why this supposed revolution just stalled.
Yeah, definitely. We've been looking at this article from Cognitive Market Research. It's called Segway's Misstep, the overhyped product that went nowhere fast. Out this February, updated in April.
And it gives a pretty fascinating analysis of why the Segway didn't quite live up to all that initial excitement.
Hmm.
Our goal today is really to unpack the core reasons. We'll look at the product itself, its limitations,
It's the marketing side of things.
how well it actually met what people needed or didn't need,
Right, the market's reaction, the timing.
the attempts later on to recover, and basically what lessons we can learn from it all. Ever wondered what really went wrong with the Segway? Let's find out.
Well, what's immediately interesting, and the article points this out, is the technology itself. I mean, the Segway PT was impressive engineering.
Oh, for sure. Self-balancing, smooth ride, kind of compact design. It looked cool.
It did, but the practical side, that's where things get tricky.
Yeah, the article really highlights some big drawbacks for, everyday use. A top speed of just 12.5 miles per hour.
Not exactly world-changing for a commute, is it?
Right, especially across a whole city.
And even if you were okay with the speed, the battery life was pretty limited. You'd need to recharge it often.
Yeah, the article flags that as a major issue for practicality. You couldn't really rely on it for long trips or, just daily urban use without thinking about plugging it in.
And it wasn't exactly small and light either.
No,
Yeah.
not something you could easily just fold up and hop on a crowded bus or train with.
Not really.
And then, let's not forget the price tag, about $5,000 at launch.
Oof, yeah. That's a serious chunk of change.
Especially for something that wasn't clearly replacing your car or your bike or the bus pass. It was something else.
Which brings us straight to the marketing, right? The article really drills down on how the hype built these huge, maybe unrealistic expectations.
Oh, absolutely. Remember all the talk. It was going to completely change how we lived, worked, traveled.
Total transformation. That was the promise.
But the article nails it, I think. It points out that Segway failed to give people a really compelling reason to ditch what they were already using.
Exactly. Why should I stop taking the bus or riding my bike or even driving for this?
Yeah. For most people, there wasn't an obvious urgent problem that the Segway solved better than anything else. Their existing habits worked fine,
They already had ways to get around. It wasn't like everyone was desperately waiting for a two-wheeled personal transporter.
And that ties into maybe misreading what consumers actually needed or wanted.
Mhm.
The article suggests Segway kind of assumed the novelty, the wow factor of the tech would be enough.
That the coolness alone would drive sales.
But that doesn't always work, does it? Especially long term.
No. And it's interesting how the article frames it like the focus on the amazing engineering might have overshadowed basic consumer stuff.
Like cost, convenience, actual practicality.
Yeah, exactly. Those things often matter more when people are deciding whether to actually buy something. And the Segway seemed to struggle on a few of those fronts.
The size for city commuters is a good example. If you're used to a bike, you can lock up easily. Or squeezing onto public transport.
A Segway felt a bit bulky, awkward in those situations.
Yeah. Even though it was compact for what it wasn't necessarily convenient in a dense urban environment.
And then there were the rules, or lack of them.
Oh, right. The article mentions that. Banned on sidewalks here, not allowed on roads there.
And in lots of places, nobody really knew what the rules were. That creates uncertainty.
Big time. How can you sell something if people don't even know where they can legally use it? It really limits your potential customers right off the bat.
Absolutely. And the article touches on that human element, too. People are often hesitant to adopt something new if it doesn't just slot easily into their daily life.
It felt maybe a bit conspicuous, like a novelty item that draws attention rather than just a normal way to get around. There's a learning curve, too, perceived or real.
So you add all that up, the price, the practical limits, the regulatory mess, the sort of novelty factor.
And it's maybe not so surprising the market reaction was, as the article puts it, lukewarm.
Yeah. Despite all the initial media buzz, it just didn't take off commercially.
Those early sales figures were way off the projections. It seemed like tech fans and early adopters bought it.
But the average person, Not so much. It never really broke into that broad consumer market.
And the article makes a good point about targeting. If you're aiming for that billion-dollar valuation, you need mass appeal, right?
Definitely. You can't just stay in a niche market.
And Segway seemed to struggle to define who this was really for. Was it for commuters, tourists, warehouse workers, last mile delivery?
They tried to position it for a bit of everything, it seems.
Which, looking back, maybe diluted the message. The article implies that lack of focus might have hurt them.
Could be. Because for many people, it just didn't feel essential. And that high price made it an even harder sell.
Yeah, the value proposition wasn't quite clear compared to the cost.
And the article really hits on this failure to establish clear, strong use cases. Like, what specific problem did it solve significantly better than a bike or a bus or walking?
For most people, the answer seemed to be, well, maybe none. Or not enough to justify the price and the hassle.
Their existing options were familiar, often cheaper, and just worked.
And now let's talk timing. The article brings this up too. Maybe the world just wasn't quite ready for the Segway back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought. Like maybe it was a bit ahead of its time.
Because if you look later, you see electric scooters and e-bikes really taking off.
Exactly. Those addressed similar urban mobility needs, but often came in at a lower price point and maybe felt a bit more normal, integrated.
Yeah, perhaps more practical designs for city life. The article also notes that back when the Segway launched, things like sustainability and alternative transport weren't as mainstream as they are now.
That's a key point. The public mindset wasn't quite there yet, and maybe the infrastructure wasn't either. Things like bike lanes weren't as common.
So the Segway was kind of a pioneer, an early experiment.
In a market that hadn't fully developed yet, it needed that market to mature a bit more, perhaps.
Okay, so the initial hype fades, sales aren't great. What happens next? The article talks about Segway trying to adapt.
Yeah, they shifted focus, tried different markets, and then eventually the big move was the merger with Ninebot in 2015, a Chinese robotics company.
Right. And that seemed to signal a definite strategic pivot.
Towards, well, products that were actually selling, like electric scooters, other personal transporters that fit the growing demand.
Which makes sense, right? That market for compact urban electric transport was clearly booming.
It was a logical move. But, as the article points out, by 2015...
The competition was already there. Big time.
Yeah. Companies like Lime, Bird, others, they'd already jumped into that electric scooter space and built up a strong presence.
So Segway's pivot, while maybe necessary for survival,
Came a bit too late to really dominate or effectively compete in that specific market. They'd lost that early mover advantage, ironically.
So, wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways from the Segway saga? The article pulls out some really crucial lessons.
Yeah, number one seems to be you absolutely need clear demand. Just having cool tech isn't enough.
Right. Innovation has to connect with practicality and a real consumer need. You can't just build it and assume they will come.
And intimately understanding your target market is vital. Who are they really? What do they need? And crucially, are they ready and willing to adopt this new thing?
Can't just assume they are. And the marketing piece, setting realistic expectations seems key.
Definitely. The article suggests the over-the-top hype might have backfired, creating disappointment when the reality didn't quite match.
Under-promise and over-deliver is usually better, isn't it?
Often, yeah. And finally, that timing element. It's so critical.
Launch too early, the market might not be ready, too late, and you're fighting established players. It's a tricky balance.
It really is.
So basically, the Segway story seems to be about this mismatch, right? Amazing tech, but it didn't quite align with practical needs. Add in the hype, maybe not fully understanding the market, and maybe hitting the scene a bit too soon.
And you get a misstep, as the article calls it. A really fascinating one, though.
Which leads to a final thought for you listening. Thinking about the Segway, what other revolutionary tech out there today might face similar hurdles?
Yeah, what's going to decide whether they become truly adopted or end up as another interesting footnote like the Segway? What are those key factors? Practicality, timing, market readiness.
Something to definitely mull over if this has got you thinking, maybe dig a bit deeper into the history of personal transport or the challenges of bringing any disruptive tech to market.
For sure. Thanks for diving in with us.